Hey, this is Kip Weston. I've had a lifelong fascination with adventure, and I'm obsessed with uncovering stories from extraordinary people. People who break from the average and become outliers. And I want to share their stories with you. So, this episode, I'm speaking with Georgia Barker. Georgia is a wildlife photographer and lifelong adventurer. Her Instagram, which I've linked in the description, is full of beautiful photos of birds and wildlife landscapes. If you have any interest in photography, bird watching, or travel, this is a great podcast to listen to because in it we cover how Georgia grew up in a farm with over 150 goats, and we covered a 7 year long odyssey throughout Africa and Asia. And yes, of course, we did cover what it's like to be a wildlife photographer and bird watcher. So, let's get into it. I'm so excited to meet with you because there's a puzzle piece I'm having trouble fitting where you are a globe-trotting adventure junkie and adrenaline junkie. And then walk me through how you get introduced to bird watching. It doesn't feel like it fits in that like self-described adrenaline lifestyle, but maybe I'm wrong.
So I didn't kind of go out there and actively pursue bird watching. It all happened kind of really organically. And I say to like my friends and my partner and like my family multiple times, like if someone had told me when I was 18 that at 31 the most passionate thing I'd be about is birds, like I would literally have laughed in their faces. I'd have laughed them out the door. I'd have been like, absolutely not, you've lost your marbles. So I don't know if you probably haven't heard of this thing, but it's called the Ideal Home Show. It's like this massive exhibition in London, and as the title suggests, it's all stuff like interiors and stuff like that. And it's something me and my mum go to every year. And 2 years ago, like I'm into nature, free traveling and stuff like that, and I saw there was a stand, and it was the RSPB. So it's the Royal Society of Bird Watching. Basically, they look after all things birds. So as they normally do with the sales pitch, they pulled me over, started chatting to them. So I was like, cool, I'll donate some money every month. Didn't think anything of it. I donated to them for about a year. And then me and my mum, the annual thing, we went back next year and I started chatting to them again. And I was like, oh yeah, I already donate to you guys. Like I spoke to you last year. And then a few weeks went past and me and my boyfriend was like, oh, what should we do today? And we had no idea what to do. And because it was fresh in my mind, I was like, well, I'm signed up to this thing called the RSPB. I was like, I think they have reserves. I was like, let's go and check it out. Like, we like being outside. Like, our primary focus then was like hiking. So it's like, we might be able to get a nice walk in. So we went there and literally I was just blown away by going into this little wildlife haven. Like RSPB reserves are they're just something else. They're really special. And this was the first one I'd been to, and this one is ultra special. And then it just snowballed from then. Like I went there and they are obviously primary for the bird watching. And I'd never really like sat down as like most people sat down and actually just watched birds. Like you take
So are they like parks they sponsor or protect? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so they have like areas. I maybe need to look into it a bit more because I don't actually completely understand like all the intricacies of what they do. But I'm pretty sure like a lot of the reserves, they work with landowners to like kind of help the protection of birds and wildlife. And a lot of the reserves, I don't know if they own them or they're like protected by the RSPB.
So they like steward these parks maybe.
Yeah. And yeah, they're like, you don't realize how much like when you go into these reserves, like nature's at the forefront and how it's forgotten in other spaces. So when you enter a lot of these, you're like, oh my God, it just like they're havens. And yeah, I went to it and absolutely loved it. And I was doing photography at the time, but it was more hiking. And then it just completely pivoted. Like it just was a domino effect from there because I just loved that experience so much. And then we rented a lens one time and like a big ass lens, what I've got now. And yeah, I just was like, right, I love it. And then I found out about the puffins and then it just kind of just kept going like that. And then to where I am now, and now I'm obsessed.
That's awesome. And then when did you start posting about that? Like when did you start sharing that hobby?
So my first post, I actually just went and checked because I was like, oh, like let me have a little look because obviously we was doing this. And my first post about birds, I think was the 1st of June, or it was like the end of May. So yeah, before that, it was mainly hiking and nature. So my first like kind of,
Yeah.
and that was my puffins. So I went and saw puffins on Skomer Island. And that was kind of like, I suppose, the big coming out of the bird posts.
Been doing super well. I mean, your page has exploded, I feel like, so congratulations.
Thank you. That's so kind.
What was your boyfriend's reaction to you saying like, this is my new hobby now?
Do you know what? He's embraced it so much. Like he actually really enjoys it as well. It's kind of like our little thing.
Yeah.
Because not many, I'm not gonna lie, not many people want to go bird watching with me. Like, so I'm lucky that he wants to. My friends, like, they love it, they're super interested by it, but they ain't coming to no reserves with me. But yeah, he really enjoys it well as well. It's like a nice thing that we both do together. So yeah, I'm lucky because I know some people would be like, "You're into what now, you weirdo?"
That's great. So it sounds like, was there a moment where it shifted for like just doing bird watching as the primary objective? It sounds like originally it started with I'm gonna go hiking and I can do bird photography as an auxiliary element to a hike.
Um, yeah, I suppose there was like it happened all very quickly, to be honest. Like I've been hiking for years,
Yeah.
and now it feels like it's added another element to hiking. So
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of, like I say, it's all just happened really organically. Like I never throughout the process, like the last few months, have kind of actively been like, oh, I'm gonna do this X, Y, and Z. Like when I go on a hike, I do this. It's just kind of like happened naturally, if that makes sense. And yeah, now like when I go hiking, like my main primary focus is watching birds, but I can't really think of like a moment where it just kind of shifted. It's weird.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of hiking, I watched your video of you and your friend walking through the Cotswolds.
Yeah.
That was fun. You guys did the whole like hiked all the way around the Cotswolds.
Yes, so we done part of the Cotswolds Trail. So I actually work for a hiking company remotely. So they do self-guided hiking, and that was part of work. So Kim, who is hilarious, she's a Geordie, she's from
Yeah.
Newcastle. We got to go and do part of the Cotswolds, which was crazy because England, it ain't known for being hot. And we went in September, which is like around about now. Normally, when you think of England, you think of these autumnal vibes. It was a heat wave, it was boiling. So, yeah, it was an interesting
Oh.
experience.
Yeah, especially when you're outdoor hiking all day.
Honestly, we was like two little like crispy chips getting fried in the English heat. Like, it was
Instead
bad,
of like
but
wine nights, you're
oh,
doing Gatorade and Pedialyte.
literally, like we was like, what is going on? What is in this carnation? Yeah, it was bizarre, but it was good. I mean, as a British people complain, like if it's too hot, we complain. If it's too cold, I try not to be typical British, but sometimes it is like, excuse me, this is too hot.
I was just in your neck of the woods for the first time the other week. I was in London for the first time. It's interesting city.
What did you think of it? Spill the tea. Spill the English
I
tea.
loved all the museums.
Yeah, we have a lot of museums. Which ones did you go
It
to?
was maybe like too much city for me though. Like it felt like New York in the
Yeah.
sense it's just very overwhelming. It's just not I'm not a big city person, so it's just maybe a little busy. But I loved the museums. I love history and all that. I did the Churchill Museum, British History Museum.
Oh, yay.
I think I would have liked your Cotswolds trip better.
Yeah,
Just
that's
kind of more
more
my
like,
speed.
yeah, Cotswolds is more, like chocolate box England, whereas London is more like an assault on the senses. Like, you get it
Yes.
all, didn't you? It is, I mean, I love
Yeah.
London, but I don't know how anyone lives there, like full time. Like,
Yeah.
not for me.
Yeah. It was cool to see though. I mean, I love seeing all the double decker buses and red phone booths.
Oh, yay. And all the history. Did you enjoy like the architecture as well? Like the buildings,
Oh
that must
yeah.
be really cool architecture.
Oh my gosh. And we did, like changing of the keys, or what do you call it? In,
Oh, changing of the guards?
Changing of the guard, yeah.
Yeah.
That was really neat.
No, it is cool, isn't it? Like all these little things that you can do. There's a lot to do in London. Yeah, like I'm sure you wasn't short of anything to do and
It
activities.
was too much. Yeah, we're like, oh, we have too little time to see everything I want to see.
Oh, I'm glad you got to see it though. That's cool.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. And speaking of seeing places, could you tell me about your 7 years abroad?
So yeah, I it all started off. It's kind of a similar story to the birds as well. Like it happened organically and snowballed. Maybe this is the theme of my life.
I
Um,
was at another expo.
yeah, I was at another expo. Someone approached me. No. So I was working a normal 9 to 5 job. I was actually studying to be an accountant, and I kind of like this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it was like because obviously this is like 2015, so we're talking 9 years ago. My math weren't mathing then. And Instagram was relatively new, but you know, you still had like little memes. And I remember seeing a meme and it said on it, it was like, my greatest fear isn't the norm. My greatest fear is like living a life lived, and the only thing that I look forward to every year is a 2 week holiday. And I remember sitting in
Hmm.
that office, and I don't know why this stupid little meme really affected me. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm literally sat in this office staring at four walls, and I'm like 22, and the world's my oyster, but I'm treating my world as if there's only four walls. So I literally booked a one-way ticket to Australia. Nobody believed in me. Everybody was like, she's going to be back after 2 weeks. Like, everybody thought that I wasn't capable. And I absolutely just fell in love with traveling. So, yeah, my original year working, it's called a working holiday visa. My original year in Australia just snowballed. Again, it wasn't meant to be 7. I done Australia for a year, and then I ended up traveling Southeast Asia. Then I went to New Zealand. I literally got a working holiday visa there just to bridge the gap because I really wanted to go to Africa. But between Asia and Africa, like the timings didn't work because I wanted to like get the right seasons. So I was like, oh, I'll go to New Zealand, I'll get a working holiday visa, and then I'll go home after that. But as what a lot was happens to a lot of travelers, typically I met a man in New Zealand and was like, oh God, I'm in love. So I went to Africa and then went back to New Zealand. Obviously, the relationship didn't last, but the traveling did. So then I ended up staying in New Zealand for 2.5 years. And then I went to Canada for 2 years and then traveling in between. So yeah, I just kept adding it on. Basically, I wanted to avoid responsibility for as long as possible, I think.
Yeah, as you should. I mean, who wants that?
Who wants that, honestly? I'm like, ew, responsibility.
That's so cool. Do you remember what it was like those first few weeks or months, even when you were in Australia?
It was a bit of a blur. Um,
Yeah.
because
Did you keep a journal or anything?
I didn't, but one thing that I have kept from my traveling that I love, and I so wish I'd kept it up. And anyone traveling, I really recommend you do this. Is I kept a happiness book, and people that I met, I would ask them to write in the book what their definition of happiness was. And it's so nice to look over because I've got all these people from all over the world, what they perceive as happiness. And I sometimes look at that when I'm having like a bad day or I feel a little bit down. But I only done it for, I think, my time for like a month or two. So I have like a good amount of entries, but I don't have loads. And I really wish that I'd done that throughout because it would be I mean, it is an amazing thing to read, but can you imagine how amazing that would be if I'd done that through the whole thing and everyone all around the world was like, what makes them happy in their definition of happiness?
It'd be a huge tome. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. I mean, it's still cool as it is, but yeah, I love that.
Yeah, what a great idea. How did you think of that?
I think I actually can't really remember, but I kind of remember feeling really down one day. I'm very
Yeah.
much into like psychology and philosophy. I love a bit of philosophy, so I love things like that. And I was just like, happiness is so subjective, and I was like, I really want to find out what happiness means to other people. And then as I was
Right.
traveling, I just come up with the idea. I was like, I'm just going to get people to write it down. And it's a great way. A lot of my travel was solo. Like most of it I done by myself.
Mm,
And if you don't find ways to talk to people, it becomes very lonely. Like it kind of forces you outside your comfort zone. And having something like
yeah.
that gives you kind of a reason to talk to a stranger. It's a good icebreaker. So it was always good coming up with little ideas like that rather than just being like, hey, be my friend. It was more like an interesting way to start a conversation.
Yeah, totally. Was there a how did you balance being extroverted and trying to meet people, but were there other safety concerns of being a solo traveler that you had to balance between the two?
Do you know what? From my perspective, and I completely understand this is like so different for other people because some people do experience obviously traumatic things. But in my whole 7 years of traveling, I've never felt unsafe or nothing like nothing, touch wood, nothing bad's ever happened
Yeah,
to me.
right.
I've actually felt more unsafe sometimes going around the streets of London than I have than in
Yeah,
like remote parts of Africa and like traveling Asia and going places by myself. But I also think it is good to always, like, I've always at the forefront of my mind, have common sense. Like, don't go around like wearing really ostentatious objects or like put yourself
right.
in uncomfortable positions. Um, I think it also, like, I am quite direct as a person. So if someone is making me feel uncomfortable, I will kind of be like a bit sarcastic and make a joke of it or get out of the situation. But to be honest, I mean, touch wood, nothing's ever happened to me. And I have been, I don't know, lucky, or I think sometimes there is this perception of the world that it's this dangerous, unsafe place when in reality, most of the time it's not. Like, people are kind, people are good, people do want to help you genuinely most of the time. So yeah, I've had a overall really positive experience.
Oh, that's incredible. That's great to hear. I'm gonna add exactly what you just said to my happiness book. That's great. That makes me really happy to hear you didn't have like a scary experience like that. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, the only
Where,
one thing that I can think that happened, and it's not funny, but it kind of is, like, literally this is the only isolated event in like the whole 7 years, is that I was in the middle of Indonesia and it was like this random, not touristy place, and there was a guy on a moped, probably, I don't know, maybe like 20 meters in front of me, and he was getting on his moped and he like drove towards me. And it's a thing that people do, take bags, and I stupidly, like,
yeah,
they always say like wear your bag across you so they can't take it off you. I stupidly had it on my shoulder, and I thought, oh my god, he's going for the bag, he's got, because he put his hand out. No, he just touched my boob. So he went past on this moped and just a little touch and then mopeded off. And all I could think was, what a stupid man, you could have had money and all you got was a little boob to grab. So, but yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, in some places, like, men do have a certain view of women, and yeah,
yeah.
things like that tend to happen. But I mean, I think that's pretty good going for that's the only thing to ever have happened. But yeah, I look back and now and kind of laugh at it. I'm kind of like, what a fool! You should have took my money.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Where in Asia and Africa did you go to?
Asia, I went to Indonesia, Borneo, Malaysia, China, Cambodia, Bali, Vietnam. I think
Oh my
that's
gosh.
it. And then,
Better
sorry,
question.
Africa, I went to South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Tanzania, and Kenya. I always forget one. There's always, but I think that's all of them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Did you see like Kilimanjaro then? Is that I think it's around?
I didn't climb Kilimanjaro, no, but there was a few people that I met that did, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. Did you do safari or anything?
I did. So in Africa, I went from Cape Town up to Nairobi. It was over a 6 week period and it was mainly camping. Um, at the time, obviously, backpacking, like, safari is ridiculously expensive. Like, I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
looked into it. It is hella dollar. So I love a good research on the internet, and I found this amazing company called Absolute Africa, and I booked through them, and it was significantly cheaper, and you camp a lot. And it's like a very authentic kind of African experience, a little bit more. You're not staying in like bougie places, but you're really kind of like experiencing it. So yeah, I've done like a lot of safaris. One of the things that I done that is probably one of my favorite travel memories was at Victoria Falls. That's on like, I think it's the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe. I think, don't quote me. And I went to Devil's Pool, and it's literally, you're just on the edge of the waterfall, and it is just crazy, because the only thing that is your safety is just a man just holding your arm so you don't go over the edge. That's
Oh
it.
my gosh.
If you don't know what it
Oh
is,
my
after
gosh.
this, Google it.
Okay.
It's wild. Like, when I look
Oh,
back at
my
that
palms
now,
are sweating.
me and my friend done it hung over as well. We had a big night the night before, like everyone was partying, and because you kind of have to like swim out to it, and there's a bit where like as you're swimming you have to kind of go round, but the current can take you. My friend started swimming and the current started to take her, and I'm going, go back, because I'm thinking I'm gonna see her just go over the edge. This is not what I want to see on a morning. Like, I don't want to see death. But yeah, how we done that hung maybe it helped, actually. Maybe it kind of like lowered our IQs for a bit to realize how stupid it was what we was doing, but it was really fun at the same time.
There's probably so many stories that end that way. Like, it was so dumb, but it was so
Yeah,
fun.
so many. Can you imagine? On your gravestone, it was fun, but it was
Yeah,
dumb.
that's awesome. Do you have any crazy roommate stories? I imagine you had to stay in some hostels and kind of interesting apartment setups. Did you ever have wild roommates?
Um, I didn't have too many wild roommates. I mean, you get the typical staying in hostels, like someone's getting it on above you, and you're like, this is not something I ordered. I didn't think I wanted to be part of this. Like, I don't want to be shook to sleep by someone just going at it, but I mean, that's part of the hostel life. But roommates, I mean, nothing too crazy, just the typical of, like annoying people, like not washing the dishes, staying
Right.
up, making a noise. But yeah, I tried to, when I picked like places to live, I was like, at the beginning, I kind of wanted to have a bit of a party, but like I'm very like clean and like regimented and like things in an order. So I kind of always pick people. I'm like, how boring do you seem? Because that's good. I want boring. If
Yeah,
someone
right.
seemed like a bit of a party animal, I was like, this probably isn't for me. I want someone that kind of just wants to lay low and stay in their room. So yeah, I made sure that I picked housing situations that was kind of a little bit better, so I didn't get into them situations.
Yeah, because in my head, anyone who grew up on a farm is good at chores. Especially, like, that's a
Oh,
good roommate, green flag for me.
I don't know, because like our farm was a little bit different. Like, I wasn't really like out doing stuff. But yeah, I definitely like a clean and tidy house. Like, I like things in order. Like, I can't stand just mess. So yeah, hopefully I'm a good roommate. I can ask my plants. I live with my plants, so I'm like, what do you guys think? Do you think I'm a good roommate?
They look pretty verdant, so that's good.
If they talk shit, they're not getting a watering. No fertilizer for you.
Could you tell me what it was like growing up on a goat farm?
It's a hard question to answer, because obviously I don't know any different. So it's like I can't really
Right.
compare to like a normal kind of like childhood. But I would say like it was so good. Like, I loved growing up on a farm, like being outdoors. I didn't obviously have like the typical pets. I'd be walking, like I never had a dog as a kid. My dog was a goat on a lead, so I'd walk the goats around on a lead. I'd put like the little bunny rabbits, like put a little like my dollies like hats on them and put them in prams. I like, when I think back, like my parents aren't into nature. Like, the farm was a means of getting property on the land, so it was never to kind of be at one with nature or be with the animals. But now when I like look
Sure,
back
sure.
at it, I'm like, it kind of did lay the foundation of why I like being outside and like wildlife and animals. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a great childhood for any kid to have, just to be like running around a farm.
Were your neighbors ever like, "What is this girl doing walking a goat in our front yard?"
I mean, if I was them, I'd have been like, Joe, when you have to like double take sometimes, and you're like, huh? Is that a goat on a
Yeah.
lead? I'm pretty sure I mean, I was none the wiser, but I'm pretty sure I would have got some weird looks if they would have saw it. Like, that child needs help. Why is she walking a goat?
When you go to school, are your classmates and friends all kind of in agriculture as well? Do they have a similar home situation?
No, it's very unique. Like, I live in Essex. So Essex is, I don't know if you know much about Essex. It's
Mm-mm.
got a big reputation of being very pretentious, like all the fake tan, the eyelashes. Obviously, this is a very big stereotype. Like, as we all
Right.
know, stereotypes are the
We
amplifier.
don't have those in America.
No, not at all. What stereotypes? It's kind of like, like Jersey Shore? Like, you have
Yeah.
that is kind of the vibe of what Essex was years ago. So yeah, I mean, there was no one growing up on a farm. I think I was probably one of the only people growing up on a farm. Like, it wasn't typical.
Yeah. Were you a popular like sleepover house then, or for friends to come over after school? Would they want to see the sheep and the
No,
bunnies?
not really. When I was a kid, yeah, but once I got
Yeah.
into like a teenager, no. I remember actually people making like fun of it, being like, "Oh, like
Oh.
goat girl," and like, you grew up on a farm. Like, I remember people like making fun of it. Like, I mean, kids are cruel, aren't they? Like, especially teenagers.
Yeah.
Teenagers are cruel. I mean, I'm sure I said some things that were not too nice, and now I'd probably absolutely cringe at them. But yeah, I remember like primary school, which I think is like elementary school. Um, we would bring in goats for like show and tell. So that was pretty cool because I'd be like, oh, they're my goats. Like,
Yeah.
it'd be really funny because I'd be like, oh, this is Snow White and stuff like that. Like, it'd be so yeah, that was cool to be like, all the kids were like loving the goat coming into school because it's something different. I must have been about like 6 or 7 then. And then it being like, well, this is mine. This is cool. So yeah, that's probably the only time I benefited from having goats. Other than that, no one was really interested.
Oh man. I think it would be so cool to grow up. I mean, it's so many too. You said 150, I think.
150, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's serious. That's a lot of work.
It is. And my poor mum, bless her, like, she done all the work. Like, she was up with the goats. Like, if the mums rejected the babies, we'd have like a baby goat in the airing cupboard, and she'd make sure it was like fed through the night. And then yeah, we'd have rabbits. I had a Shetland pony at one point, which was an absolute riot. Like, it was not mentally well. Like, we had all kinds of animals. It's a lot of work. Obviously, I got the benefits of being a kid and not really having to do much, but I don't think I'd own a farm now. Like,
Yeah.
it's because it keeps you, it's like a responsibility. Like, it keeps you
Right.
like secured to that one place. But yeah, shout out to my mum, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Back to your 2 week PTO meme. Doesn't really feel like at a farm there's PTO.
Yeah.
It's like a full time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can't take any holidays, like, because who the hell's going to look after your goats? You can't just call up
Right.
your mate and be like, excuse me, I'm going to Spain for a week. Can you look after 150 goats? Like,
Right.
it's
It's
just
not
not
water my plants.
possible.
Yeah.
Or start divvying them up between people. You're like, right, Sharon, you've got 30. You over there, Kerry, you've got 10. Like, you just can't do it.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Do you remember getting into photography as a kid? How did you develop initially that hobby?
I've always been creative. Like, I've always been one of these people that like loved drama, loved dance. And photography, I kind of picked up a passion when I was traveling because
Yeah.
I was seeing photos of these amazing landscapes and these spots. And I was kind of like inspired to want to go there and then recreate it myself. So it kind of developed through traveling to kind of want to document my travels, and then it become more like a creative passion, and then it
Yep.
just kind of kept spiraling from there. And then yeah, the last few years I kind of took it a little bit more seriously, but it still was just a hobby. And it's only in the last year that I was like, I actually really enjoy doing this. But I think what a lot of people do and what I done, do you know when you really enjoy doing something, but you don't quite have the belief in yourself, and you procrastinate and you procrastinate and you procrastinate. And I just kind of realized that actually, like, I'm okay at this. If I actually applied myself and put some purposeful practice into this, I could be good at it. So yeah, it's one of them things that's just progressed. It's kind of the same as, like I say, with the other things. Like, I didn't just pick up a camera one day and be like, this is my passion. It's just kind of organically developed, and now I'm like super passionate about it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That makes sense to me because you don't really get, it's not like photography is a really stable class growing up, but I could see
No,
how you get introduced to any sort of creative medium. And you're like, oh, okay, this fits my personality type. This fits my interest.
definitely. Yeah.
Do you remember, like, I wonder where in your travels, before you're into photography, were there moments you're like, oh, I really wish I had a camera during these moments earlier in my travels to capture some of these experiences?
Oh my God, yeah. Now when I look back, like, obviously I traveled Africa. So I went through
Yeah,
like I went on all these safaris. If I had that opportunity now, like, I would literally be like a sponge soaking it up. Like, don't get me wrong, always loved animals, always loved wildlife, but like, it does make me realize I was probably a little bit indifferent. I didn't really appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, I've barely got any photos from that. I literally would
yeah.
look back and I've probably got a few pictures of some elephants taken on a phone, not even a proper camera. Um, so yeah, if there is one time that I could like bloody go back and rewind, that is the time, because it would be like day and night now. That would be you wouldn't be able to get me off the truck. They'd be having to like pull me off. Whereas then I'm like, oh, look, a nice elephant. They're just carrying on. Now I'd be like, I'm glued to this truck. Just leave me there. Leave me with the hyenas. I'm taking photos with them. Okay.
If a friend came up to you and said, Georgia, I'm thinking about doing what you did, and I want to go travel the world for just 1 year. I just want to go and see Australia for 1 year or insert any country of their choice. Would that be part of your advice for them? Like, okay, bring a fun camera and take a lot of photos and try and capture as much as you can?
Um, I mean, it would depend on their passions. If they had a passion for photography, then I'd be like, try and capture it. But I mean, it's kind of contradictory, because obviously I do love photography, but I also do think there needs to be like really good boundaries, because sometimes you will find yourself like too immersed in the photography and not the experience.
Hmm.
So I think you need to sometimes really have to like rain check yourself and be like, am I experiencing this right now? Am I just capturing it? Like, what am I doing?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I don't want to be consumed by this. Like, it needs to add to the experience, not be the experience of just taking a photo of it. So, yeah, if someone was going to go traveling, I'd be like, absolutely, like, take your camera, enjoy the travels. But remember, like, if you're doing something just for the photo, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And you're never going to have that, like, memory of it that you want to. So, yeah, I'd say it's a balance.
Oh my gosh, that's a really good insight. Because I didn't even think about that. Like, if you end up looking through your trip through the camera lens instead of above it.
Yeah, I have to remind myself that a lot now when I do wildlife photography. But I think because of travel, like, I've got kind of that inner monologue in my head anyway, that's kind of like, make sure that you're experiencing this in reality and not experiencing it through a screen. Because
Right,
I think a lot of people can fall victim to that, especially, do you know, when you see people taking like videos, for example, like concerts? Like, I
right,
mean this in the nicest way. Most people don't give a shit about seeing your concert
right.
experience. Like, they don't
That's when you hit
really care.
skip on the stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have a few videos because definitely, like, I love looking back at things and it's sparking that memory, but just ensure that you are having the right balance. Like, take a few videos and then actually be present and be there and enjoy the experiences, because
Yeah,
nothing is going to beat that.
right. Something I was wondering with wildlife photography in terms of like breaking it between hiking and photography, I can't it's hard for me to picture a not successful hike.
Yeah.
Like it's just always fun to get outside for me and walk around with friends. But I can definitely see committing to a wildlife photography day and having it not be successful, where you
I was
just can't
actually,
find anything. Yeah, sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
So sorry. So this actually happened. So I met this really nice guy who is now actually a really good friend called Will. And me and my partner actually met him at a nature reserve. Like, we got talking to him and his friends, and like, we now go out with him and we go bird watching and we go bird
Yeah,
photography. And I actually met up with him the other day. He is an amazing photographer and he dedicates a lot of time to like finding owls, and he's really good at it. So we went out the other day, we saw absolutely nothing, like nothing. And he'd been seeing kestrels the few days before, and he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I was like, "Will, do not be sorry." And we had a conversation about this a few times, and we was like, we actually think this is why we like wildlife photography, because you're not successful every time. Because when you do
oh
finally see
yeah,
something and capture it, it makes it so much more special. If you went out every single time and you saw something, it wouldn't be as special. Like, you wouldn't have that feeling of like accomplishment. You wouldn't feel like you've really worked to get that photo. So yeah, I actually like the whole experience and like not seeing things. And it is one of the things in life, because there isn't many things like that has got variables. Like, most
yeah.
things, like, you're guaranteed something at the end of it, whereas this, you're not. And I think it's actually nice to be disappointed. I don't think you should get your way all the time. I think sometimes you should be disappointed.
Oh my gosh, what a great what a wise perspective to have on that hobby.
A wise old owl.
Yeah. And just on hobbies in general or life in general. Like I'm sure traveling it's probably most of the time your plan doesn't go 100% like you think it would.
Absolutely. I think that is what makes you thankful and appreciate when it does go right. Like, I'm a big believer that I think we aren't very good in today's society of dealing with minor inconveniences, because everything does always go our way. So when a small little thing goes wrong, it's amplified. It's like, oh, there's a bit of traffic. Oh my God, it's the worst thing in the world. When you have perspective about it, it's like, you're sitting there for what, 5 minutes extra, 10 minutes extra? It's a minor inconvenience. Whereas when you go like abroad and go traveling and you're put in all these different situations and you really test yourself, like, it really gives you perspective and you realize that things do go wrong. Is it the end of the world? No. And I always think like, it's not like what goes wrong, it's like how you deal with it. Like, see it as an opportunity. Like, okay, you're sitting in traffic for an extra 10 minutes, that gives you 10 minutes of singing and dancing in the car or thinking about something or giving you a bit more extra time for yourself. Like, I'm really a big believer in things should go wrong in life. Not everything should go your way all the time. Not everything should be a success, because that makes people really entitled, and we shouldn't be entitled. Like, you should be grateful and appreciative when things do go right. But if your
Yeah.
baseline is that things are going right all the time, then you haven't got any variation. And that's what I love about wildlife photography, because it doesn't go right and it humbles you very quickly.
I'm sure there are moments too, at least when you're learning the craft, where everything on nature's end goes right, but you can't get your camera set up or
Oh
your
my God.
lens
Yeah,
can't focus. Like it's all on you, the mistake side of it.
absolutely. There's been a few times where but I mean, I love my Sony, but like, I'm like, why is it's like focusing on the wrong thing. I'm like, I want you, like, when I was capturing the kingfisher the other day, And he kept focusing on like the background, and I'm like, focus on the stick, focus on the stick. So I'm like putting this camera all around. So yeah, I mean, it teaches you patience as well, because it's like you really have to be like, again, it's a minor inconvenience. Is it really the end of the world that my camera's focusing on a leaf rather than a stick? But it teaches you
Right, right.
to quickly go, right, I need to rectify this rather than being angry about it. But yeah, because they're so fast as well. So fast, birds. So you really have to get quick at like decision making, like problem solving. Like you haven't got long to get this shot. So you need to like be able to make and resolve things really quickly. Which is a skill in itself. I mean, I can't say I've completely mastered it, but I'm getting there.
Do you get a lot of friends asking you to take photos of them now that you have a super camera and showcase your skill with it?
Not really, no. I do find a lot of people are self-conscious in front of the camera. So it's actually quite difficult.
Hmm.
Like when I'm actually trying to get photos of like a topic or something I haven't photographed before so I can build up my portfolio. Because I do
Yeah.
like product photography, portraits and stuff like that. It's actually quite hard to find people. So if anyone wants some photos, come my way.
What advice would you give to someone who's curious about getting into bird watching? What would be the best first steps?
I would say the best first steps is so plain and simple, but literally just get outside. Like go outside and just experience what's around you. I am still guilty of it. Like I've grown up in the countryside in like Essex in England, and I've always assumed my whole life that nothing's here. Everything, everything exciting, all the wildlife is further. It's a bit like traveling. You don't take advantage of where you live. You're
Yeah.
like, everything's better further. The last few months, I've literally just sat outside, walked around the area. Like, it is teeming with wildlife. Like, how ignorant was I? Nature is all around you. So I would say you don't have to travel far. You don't have to go to wondrous lands. Just go around where you live and just stop and listen to things. I would say, like, the first thing is like fall in love with nature, really get to know its like habits, like what's around you, like know your surroundings before you start photographing stuff. Especially if you're doing photography already, like that will come a lot quicker. But if you're not doing photography, because you don't again want to slide into the habits of like just being out there to photograph it. Like I like enjoying it and I like photographing to show the beauty of it. Like it's not just, don't get into a habit of like, because that is the good thing of being outside, like that it's not filled with screens and you can be at one with it, and you want to use
Yeah.
photography to amplify that experience, not take away from it. But yeah, I would say just get outside, just go about like a little nature urchin.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. We when we were in London, one of our friends just moved there actually, and she just got into painting and was
Oh
talking about how she was like, I guess white fades into the horizon, or there was some color scheme difference about
yeah,
colors and angles going into the horizon. She's talking about how that's changed, how she just looks at intersections now in streets, where she'll watch the sidewalk line like ascend into the horizon and the colors change as they go deeper out. I was like, oh, that's such an interesting way to have art literally change the way you perceive just a commonplace or just a common visual that someone not into painting or photography would just see as a normal intersection. That must
absolutely.
happen to you all the time, right?
Yeah, like I can definitely relate to like what she's saying, because she's now got that like awareness of that. You kind of apply it to your
Yeah,
everyday life, like you say. Like she now sees like the art, got to get that word out, art composition of it. Like she sees things like artistically.
yeah,
And it's yeah the same with birds. Like I just sometimes sit there and I'm like, I am surrounded by birdsong. I'm surrounded by birds, and I've gone 31 years with not even paying any attention to it. I think it's like sometimes you can see, but are you really looking? You can hear things, but are you actually hearing it? Like you
right.
could go out, like you could probably go outside now. Like I have not, like I don't know where you are or what your environment is, but
Oh, yeah,
until you stop and probably actually make a conscious effort to listen, you'll hear things that you're like, I can't believe that I've not been paying attention to this. Like, it's all around me and I've just been complacent. And like I say, I've always just assumed that nothing's around me, but everything is around me. It's just that I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, I completely get that. There's some quote in a book I like where talk about you don't necessarily hear nature, but you'll hear its absence. So if you walked outside and there were
Absolutely.
no birds singing, it's going to sound a little weird to your ear because you're just so used to hearing the birds singing and leaves brushing. And
Yeah,
I thought that's
that
an
is
interesting way to think about it.
that's so valid. Yeah, it's so valid. It's a bit like, I mean, you can apply it to life. It's like you don't realize how sometimes people are so kind to you until they stop being kind. And it's, you didn't
Right.
realize you had it so good. And like these people were actually being lovely until you experience the reverse. And it's the same, like you say, when you read about that, you don't even, it's just complacency. You don't even realize it's all around you until it's taken away.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting how quickly your baseline will reset.
So quickly, like, and all the things you take for granted, and then when it's taken away, you're
Yeah.
like, kind of miss that.
Last travel question, but I was curious after all like 7 years of your travel, speaking of this kind of reset, is there like a I don't want to say like phantom limb, but is there a part of you when you come home that misses this sort of ability to just go and see completely new places all the time and do completely new experiences? Is there an element of you that misses that part of 7 years abroad that maybe is missing when you go home?
I think not really, because when I stopped and decided to stop living abroad, I was kind of in the right mental headspace. I
Yeah.
do think a lot of traveling and moving around, depending on what kind of lifestyle you has, does stem a lot from like the psychological need. Maybe you're running away
Mm,
from something, maybe you need that adrenaline kick, maybe you want to, there's so many reasons. I kind of come to the conclusion that I wanted to come back to the UK because I noticed a bit of a bad trait within myself. And when you travel and you're moving around all the time, like you get used to things being changing, like things change all the time, things aren't consistent. And you start to treat things as if they're disposable because, in a way, they essentially are. So you don't
right,
invest in friendships so much, you don't invest in relationships so much, you don't invest in jobs because you know that you're only going to be there a year, you're only going to be there a few weeks,
right.
you're going to be a few months. And I kind of got to the point where I was a little bit sick of that. I was like, I'm not investing in anything because everything is changeable and disposable. I want to have a little bit more of a base. Um, so that's when I kind of decided that, do you know what, I want to have a base in England, and be primarily here. But I knew I would never give up traveling, but in a different,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be
right,
consistent. And I've learned a lot from it. Like, adventure is where you want it to be. You don't have to travel to the furthest lands, the most exotic, to have an adventure. You can literally go down the road, set up a little fire, camp out, and that is an adventure. Like, I've had just as much fun discovering where I live than what I did across the other side of the world. I think there's a lot to do with your mindset as well.
mm,
Like, an adventure is anything you want it to be. It doesn't need to be something elaborate and really different from the norm. It just needs to be something you enjoy and that pushes yourself and is a little bit different.
yeah. What do you credit your introspective skills to?
Well, what skills back to, sorry?
You're like you're very introspective, and I feel like you have a lot of good reflective. You just you articulate kind of where your headspace is very well. So I'm wondering where do you credit that to?
I suppose it's an accumulation, like it's accumulation of a load of things. Um,
Yeah,
Traveling again, meeting loads of people from
yeah,
different cultures and having different experiences. I love to read. I'm very into psychology and philosophy. I think it does wonders for your brain.
Yeah.
learn about how it works, how you may think and perceive things in a certain way. I also read, like, I'm really bad at reading fiction. I've got loads of books, don't have a single fiction book on my shelf. I read mainly non-fiction, but I make sure what I read is varied. I think it's very easy to become narrow-minded because your bubble is so small. And I think it's like really easy to get trapped in that. And I make a conscious effort to not. And I think that gives you a lot of perspective, always trying to see something from another person's eyes or another way. And I'm
Uh,
a very, very big believer in being objective. Try not to think just the way you think and be emotional about it. Look at it objectively, which I think helps. But it's just things you learn through so many different things happening in your life, so many different little experiences. And I think they all just kind of mold together. Like, I would never say, oh, it's just this one thing that's made me think like this. It's probably like an accumulation of years in the making, like years in the making.
right. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, it just feels like you have such a good grasp of where your headspace is
Oh,
and
thank
why
you.
you're doing the things you want to do, and it's very impressive.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
Hey, will you humor me for a speed round of questions?
Of course, yeah. I don't know how speedy are they.
Okay. Pretty quick.
I'll try and
Okay.
be speedy.
What is your You can take your time. What's your favorite bird?
At the moment, owls, which is really hard to say in my accent because I sound like I'm saying owl, but like barn owls, tawny owls.
Do you have a favorite animal fun fact you've learned?
I learned this recently, and I mean, it is impressive, but it's not like the biggest fun fact. But swifts, in their first 2 to 3 years of life, constantly flying. They don't ever stop. They fly, they sleep on the wing, they eat on wing, everything. 2, 3 years constantly flying. Mind blowing.
Oh my gosh. Um, have you ever hung out with like a little kid who just learns about like dinosaurs and he's so eager to give you facts about dinosaurs?
No, I haven't.
It kind of reminds me of like little nephews or something. They just are like so eager to share exactly what they've learned.
Yeah, I feel like that sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, listen to this little
Yeah,
fact.
I could always relate to that. It's like if I ever learn a fun fact, I'm just biting my tongue trying to share it with someone. Like they probably
You
don't
want
want
to
to know this,
share it with someone though, don't you? You want to,
but
like, when
yeah,
you
I
learn
want to
something
share it
cool,
right away.
you're like, someone
Yeah,
else needs to hear this.
yeah. Like if I were you, that Swift thing probably would have come up first part of the interview.
I tell you
Like,
what,
did
I
you
mean,
know?
this isn't an animal fact, but this one, I've got to share it now. We've said this. It blows my mind. So, do you know that humans cannot feel wetness? So, when you put your hand in water, what you're feeling is just a change in pressure and a change in temperature. We do not have the receptors in our skin to feel wet.
Oh, I don't know how to feel about that. I
How
don't
mind,
know what to do with
like,
that.
when I first heard that, I was like, it changed my brain chemistry. I was like, you can feel wet. And then when you think, after this, go put your hand in a bucket of water and you'll realize you're like, it is just the change of temperature and the feeling, like the pressure. We don't have receptors in our skin
Yeah,
to
that's
feel.
interesting.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Oh
It's
my God.
blowing
And
your
then yeah, I
mind.
guess
See,
sweaty.
you're like,
Yeah, yeah.
what?
Okay, coffee or tea?
Tea, herbal tea. I'm really bad at being British. I don't drink English tea, but I'm a lemon, ginger, and honey.
And last one, famous person alive or dead you'd most want to have dinner with.
This is like so typical, but David Attenborough. I love David Attenborough.
Oh, that's perfect for you. Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
obsessed. Read his book, watch all the documentaries. I would probably, he would hate it. I'd be literally just like staring at him like a fangirl. I would hopefully, maybe one day before he conks it, because I'm gonna probably cry the day he
Yeah,
dies, but
yeah.
hopefully that would be my goal.
Well, dead or alive, so you could even get him.
I'll get him back.
You could
Yeah,
still get him. Yeah.
that's a good point. Okay, cool. I'll be like, David, come here. We're having a tea party.
Yep. And last question, where can listeners find and support your work?
So Nature with Georgia. So at the moment I'm just on Instagram, but I am working on some YouTube stuff, but it will be the same name. So come see this crazy girl talk about birds.
I love it. It's so fun.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Talking about
And thank you
birds.
so much. Yeah, it's just fun to hear someone like so passionate share their passion and how they got into it. So thank you. This has been great.
Oh, it's been lovely speaking to you as well.
That's this episode of Outliers. Thanks so much to Georgia for joining, and thank you for listening. Be sure to check out Georgia's socials, which I've linked in the description below. Be sure to hit subscribe. Stay tuned for future interviews.